Today's video is on retreating and board presence. Do you guys remember retreating? Anybody? Anyone out there? Well, hopefully we can make that more realistic for you to use in your games. I know I personally don't use it enough, and I wish I could change that and see if it can't help me steal a few unexpected victories. Using retreats is even more powerful if your model is worth more than one on an objective. Looking at you, my fine friends over there in the ogre and giant camps, with your might makes right rules, you can really make use of board presence to take objectives that you have almost no right to having, and getting a cheeky retreat at the right time lets you hold them even longer despite the fact that you were probably about to die. In the process of this video, we will look at the importance of board presence and maybe some ways of causing multiple problems that need to be dealt with by our opponent when they would rather be pushing into a single enemy location. But first, let's look at the fine art of running away, or for our Orc friends over there, tactical withdrawal might be a better term. And let's jump to a situation where we might consider retreating and discuss why. Here, our Thunderers have bravely held the line, successfully surviving the enemy charge into our units on the objective. But their ether gold is spent, and they are unlikely to survive another turn. Similarly, they are also equally unlikely to kill enough of this enemy unit to be of value at the end of this turn. We are currently on an objective, and we are also able to retreat whilst keeping more bodies on the objective. If we stay in combat, we might lose our unit. Or the enemy could pile in more models and take the objective that way. This is a perfect time to utilise the fine art of withdrawal, so let's do this in the movement phase and roll a run, since we can't shoot after the retreat anyway, to give us more space to manoeuvre. This is what it looks like after the retreat. As you can see, we have maintained more bodies than our opponent on the objective, so we will hold it for another turn. Whilst we lost out on our shooting, the enemy also lost out on their combat phase against us, so let's call it even for now. In our opponent's turn, they will need to make a follow-up with another charge and hope that they don't whiff the roll and fail, or there is a chance for us to make it ours yet again. It is worth remembering that every retreat should be considered for its relative risks and benefits. Making the right decision at the right time can win you games. Now, let's move on to a bit more of a strange retreat, where we're not specifically trying to take an objective, but I will show you and explain why on the table. In this example, we have a unit which will die if it stays in combat, and it is not helping us hold the objective either, as that has already been lost. However, we can still try get some more value out of the unit by retreating. What we will do instead is retreat at an odd angle and try to gain some more board presence or board position. Here is what it looks like after the retreat. By doing this, we actively threaten to come back or to move on to a different objective and gain a cheeky few points from under the enemy player if they leave too little defense on anything within our reach. If the player does not want that to happen, we effectively force them to come to us yet again for a second round of combat. This can cost you valuable time when you consider that the game is only 5 rounds, and even better if by responding to this they move across and free up some more board space on the opposite flank for us to then scooch another unit into place and cause even more problems and delay for the opponent. To really show board positions in play, we need to be able to move to a larger scale game. So let's jump over to a game of Ironjaws versus Kharadron Overlords. As you may know, these armies are both highly mobile, the Ironjaws in their ability to move twice in a turn, and Kharadron Overlords in their ability to teleport around the table. Both armies also project their power in different ways, with Kharadron Overlords being able to unleash that concentrated ranged strike against, say, precious heroes, and Ironjaws feeling like the proverbial hammer blow to the face. Often, the most valuable thing we can do in a game is maintain a large presence on the board. Ways to do this can vary, including the use of reserves, high-speed units, or teleporting marauders and ardboys. Let's look across the table and identify some threats that can swing the balance when it comes to who owns objectives all over the board. Firstly, I would like to draw your attention to the Ardboys on the right flank. Whilst this is a small squad, they have the ability to charge an impressive distance, with their native +3 to charge in Iron Jaws or Big War, often turning that risky 10-inch charge into a much more reliable affair. As an opponent, you also want to ask yourself if they have a nearby teleport, as this would allow the small squad to jump across the table and threaten backfield objectives that you may have only left a minimum size unit on. Say those nice looking Arcanauts at the back of the table. However, in this case, the Kharadron player knows that there is no teleport nearby, so they've deemed it safe enough to leave alone. Of note, we would also look to the left at the 6 Gore-Grunters, which have the potential for awesome damage, even more when backed up by both a War Chanter and a Mega Boss. In the player's turn, we would have to worry about them having +1 damage to all their weapons, whilst also, through the use of Mighty Destroyers, having an awe-inspiring minimum threat range of 21 inches, and a maximum threat range in excess of 30. But how about the Kharadron Overlords? It's not all bad for them, surely. How would they threaten the table? Firstly, let's look at the infantry, and the ships moving across the table as normal. Here, we can see that the infantry cannot really reach any objectives on foot this round, so their main threat is caused by shooting attacks. Of note, they could attempt to snipe heroes or cause battle shock tests on the Iron Jaws if they are within range. And moving here, we can see that the KO player has a gun hauler. Whilst not hugely damaging, it is fantastic in its mobility, able to once per game add 6 inches to its move characteristic, which already was sat at an impressive 12 inches. Combined with the aforementioned ranged shots, this could cause you to battle shock a chaff squad off the table and leave the objective undefended right as that gun hauler floats cheekily onto the objective for a 1 model capture. Secondly, let's now look at the fly high ability of the KO airships. This is very closely related to other armies that appear from reserves or teleport, so we will quickly change the board layout a bit to show this off. Here, you can see the objectives on the left flank both only have minimum size chaff squads on them. This is useful to the player because it forces any teleports or setups we make to be outside of 9 inches, and thus unlikely to successfully charge without modifiers shifting the balance. And killing them with shooting attacks would prevent charging onto the objectives entirely. However, if we shift our focus to the bottom left objective in particular, we will notice that although they are on it, they are at the edge. Was this a mistake by the player? How can this be exploited? Well, let's perform a fly high with our Arcanaut Ironclad and find out. As you can see, the Ironclad has managed to get its toe in onto the objective capture zone, on the other side to where the chaff is, a potentially costly mistake, as the Kharadron player now has 1 model on the objective and the full firepower of an Ironclad to be brought to bear on this unit, which has a decent chance of clearing off the defenders and thus capturing the objective this round. For the player wishing to contest objectives, the value in having units that are able to teleport at a whim is that the enemy cannot move off the objective without ceding it to you. In essence, you are tying up valuable points of their army who might otherwise be used elsewhere to tip the balance in their favour, instead forcing them to sit and babysit a point. I have found in my games that often the potential of this threat actually exceeds the reality, but in games of Kharadron Overlords and Orruk Warclans in particular, you should beware their ability to shift across the table quickly. Remember, objectives win games. It's up to both you and your opponent to push your influence across the board whilst not giving up enough ground for your opponent to win. Thank you for watching my video. I have found this topic particularly difficult to discuss conceptually, as so many of these nuanced techniques come down to your particular experience with the army you are playing and the army your opponent is running. For example, in my games so far as Sons of Behemat, I have found retreating while still having a foot in on the objectives is game-changing in its power, and I would expect similar if I was to play a Stonehorn heavy build for Ogre Moor tribes. The best thing I can recommend is trying these techniques out in games when you think it might work, and then assessing after the game. If it works, make sure to implement it in future, as it will help you maximize your potential. If not, go back to the drawing board and see if you could implement it in a different way in future. What are some of the shenanigans you think can help win games? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.